it. That's what I'm going to guess. That's your favourite band of all time.
Oddly enough, it ain't.
Is it not?
I'm not saying that they're my favourite band of all time, but we're talking about a band, and are they a band? Well, they are a band because they played instruments. They're a group. I tend to call them a group rather than a band, but we're talking about the Beach Boys. And I'm going to ask the question, and I'll leave it up to you because I can't quite decide on this. And it kind of depends what mood I'm in, and it depends how much I've been listening to each respective group. But the question I'm asking, it's a bit of a shocking question for some people, but for others it is an affirmative answer. Are the Beach Boys better than the Beatles?
No.
I said it. Now,
No.
It's an instant no from you, and it's an instant no from a lot of people, but there are some people for whom it would be a yes.
And those people are mad.
Well, you think that? I can understand why you might be in that position to think that, and I totally get why you might think that. But
they probably eat jelly with broken glass in it.
The question is, Ben, are you willing to open your mind to try and get to the position where you might at least understand why some people think that the Beach Boys are better than the Beatles?
I do have. Obviously, I made this purchase the other week.
Brian had his piano.
And I do have some Beach Boys vinyl. I just find it all a little twee. That's my problem with it.
Now, the other day, mainly because of you slagging off the Beach Boys, or was it because of you slagging off the Beach Boys, or because of something? We had talked about them. I pulled
Noel
off
Gallagher
my shelves.
Said that they were the most overrated.
Yeah, I pulled out from my shelf this book.
What's it called? Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys.
How Deep is the Ocean? Essays and Conversations by Paul Williams. Now, have you heard of Paul Williams?
Yeah, he used to play centre-back for Coventry City between, I think, 1995 and 2001.
Well, the Paul Williams who wrote this book is sadly no longer with us. He did die a few years ago.
There's two Paul Williamses.
Yeah.
In fact, I went to school with somebody called Paul Williams as well.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? I think I may have gone to school with someone with that name as well. But, Paul Williams founded He had a Crawdaddy. It was an American rock magazine in the 60s. And he was one of the first wave of rock critics who wrote about music as being a serious art form and rather than just entertainment. And of course, later in the 60s, you got Rolling Stone magazine.
For everybody out there.
Paul Williams. No, that was Paul Williams.
Playing for Coventry.
Well, the Paul Williams who wrote this book was a white dude who was a bit hippie and, a bit of a cool, what you'd imagine a music journalist in the 60s to be.
I was right, 95 to 2001.
You were right. Well, it's Coventry City. If you didn't know, we'd be pretty shocked.
Yeah.
So, Paul Williams, it's quite a sad story because he had an accident where he was knocked off his bike, I think, and he had some kind of brain injury, and he had to have his family had to care for him in the last years of his life. So it had quite a sad ending to his life. But he wrote some great articles, and he put a lot of them together in books. And he was a massive Beatles fan, massive fan of all the great acts of that era. He wrote a book about Neil Young, which is really good as well. But he had a special place in his heart for Brian Wilson in particular. And I was looking through this book, which is mainly older articles compiled, but he did write some new stuff for it. But there's an article in there about the Beach Boys Good Vibrations box set, which I actually own.
Oh, yeah. I remember Good Vibrations got voted like the best single in Mojo at one point. Is that made of wood?
It's not. It's made of cardboard, but it kind of just looks like it. This came out in '93, and this was, quite a groundbreaking box set at the time because I think it was the first proper box set of the Beach Boys that had been done. You get 5 discs in here. There's 4 main discs and a 5th bonus disc. They got weird. The only thing I don't like about this is they got kind of weird. So they got some weird artists to do the the sleeves of the DVD.
It isn't really fitting with the Beach Boys.
Well, I suppose it's sort of, I don't know how it's kind of odd, isn't it?
Do you know what it reminds me of?
What's that?
It kind of it could quite easily be a Smashing Pumpkins or Red Hot Chili Peppers album.
It's supposed to be. I suppose that's kind of, ties in a way. But I never really liked the artwork on those. But what I did like about them is that they did recreate the US Capitol, the design on
the label.
the label
of the
center
of the
Capitol label. So that was a nice touch. Not many labels were doing that back in the early 90s. So you get 4 discs. Disc 1 takes you through the early surf stuff right through to 1965, I think. Disc 2 covers basically the Pet Sounds and Smile sessions, and it was the first release officially of a lot of the Smile material. There's about half an hour of stuff from Smile on there. Obviously, more came out later. Disc 3 covers that sort of late 60s, early 70s period, which it's not so underrated now, but at the time was quite an underrated period of the Beach Boys. And then Disc 4 sort of takes you through the 70s, 80s, sort of finishes off the story.
When did the Beach Boys stop performing as a full collective?
It's a good question because, of course, Mike Love, the cousin of the Wilsons, has had a... I don't know if he's still got a band going that's called the Beach Boys.
I think he has.
I mean, they made.
Can we have a look into that?
They made a record in 2012. They made an album in 2012 under the name of the Beach Boys, which had Brian Wilson on it, and Mike Love, and also Al Jardine, who was a long-term member of the band, and obviously Carl and Dennis had died by then. But
you can see the society we're living in when I start typing in Mike Love, and it comes up. Mike Love Island.
Mike from Love Island.
Mike Love Island, yeah.
Dear me. I'll just, while you look that up, I'll show, this is the booklet that came with that box. And
he's 82 now.
I learned a lot from reading this booklet. It gives you, it's a good overview of the band's history.
Yeah.
And taking it from those early surf days through to the making of Pet Sounds, Smile and beyond. So it is a good booklet. I think Mark Linnett is the guy who wrote it.
They're quite a dysfunctional family when you read about them.
Yeah. It is a family story as much as, that's the thing that makes them different to the Beatles as well, is that, there is that whole family element with a cousin involved as well and brothers. So the final disc came in a cardboard sleeve to look a bit like a bootleg.
Oh, yeah.
You've got stuff on there. You've got... you can hear some recording sessions going on. Some recordings.
2012. That's the last time they performed together.
Bit of live stuff. So that, I think that 50-odd years. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, you're not going to get any more Beach Boys now.
Well, Mike Love actually released an album last year, 2023. What's that? All right. Guess what the album was called?
Was that? This was Mike Love.
Yeah,
I know he once did an album called Mike Love Not War.
That's the one. That's from last year. Mike Love Not War, which I think is a brilliant album title.
It's kind of genius in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
There are many Brian Wilson fans who absolutely hate Mike Love because they feel that Mike contributed to Brian's mental issues and he wasn't sympathetic and stuff like that. There's a lot in the, if you go deep into the whole relationships between them issue.
Yeah.
What Paul Williams did in this, there's a great essay in this book in which he reviews this box set. At the time it came out back in 93. And his love for, the thing I like about Paul Williams as a writer is he's a rock critic who liked to just share his love for music. He wasn't about dissing bands so much or trying to be clever. He was wanting to put into words why he loved music so much and what it meant to him. So, and he does a great job of writing about this Beach Boys box set. And of course, he listened to the whole thing, 6 hours of it, and he said he also went on a drive along a long drive through California, listening to the whole
California.
box set. Yeah, and his love for it really comes across. And I think the thing it reminded me of is how much emotion there is in the Beach Boys music, and this is where this is the difference. I think. I know people have different views on Pet Sounds, and some people think it's a masterpiece, and some people don't. I've always found it a good album. I've always found it an interesting album from the production point of view, but I have come in recent years to understand more of why people find it emotional. And I think it's the Beatles never made an album like Pet Sounds because they couldn't have done, because the album was really one man's vision. This was really Brian's album, and it was all about his insecurities, and it's based on his sort of, he called it his teenage symphony to God, or at least he said Smile was going to be his teenage symphony, but I think this is his teenage symphony because it is all about those sort of insecurities of youth and feelings of love,
which we all have,
kind of thing.
Which we all have those.
So the Beatles never made an album that was this much one person's vision. They couldn't have done with their setup, and they didn't make
with a collective.
And they didn't make an album that had this much emotional, this focused and this emotional all the way through the album. So it's an album that the Beatles couldn't have made. But of course, the Beatles did things that the Beach Boys couldn't have done. But I think that's the essential difference, is that people who are really big fans of the Beach Boys get the music on a very emotional level. It does sort of touch them quite deeply. And I think that's the thing. If it doesn't get you like that, then you're not going to think they're better than the Beatles.
I mean, you can tell by looking at him that he's obviously a deep thinker and an emotional guy. I think he's got that sort of look to him.
Yeah. There's so many songs that are great, and there's so many sort of little songs that are just really good that are not, they're not the sort of songs that necessarily will always be hits, but they're just really cool little songs. And so many great little moments in the music. The more you listen to it, the more it reveals. And even some of the stuff that's been overlooked, there's even stuff in the 70s that's really good. So I think, and the other thing, of course, about the Beach Boys, I mean, both the bands, Beach Boys and the Beatles, they were both marketed at teenagers early on, and the Beatles were, of course, marketed at teen girls. But the Beach Boys had this image around surfing and cars, which does look quite dated now. Even more so than the Beach Boys, because the Beatles early on had their suits that Brian Epstein put them in, but that doesn't look quite as dated as the Pendleton surf shirt.
I suppose what the Beach Boys had in cars and surfing, the Beatles had in wanting to hold your hand. And
it's a similar. It was that same
sort of
era, wasn't it?
Very sort of,
It was aimed at the teen market. So you have to listen past that. When you listen to a song like Surfer Girl, you have to kind of listen past the fact that it's a romantic song, supposedly from a teen boy to his girlfriend who's also surfing. And you have to get to the emotional heart of Brian's sort of, he's doing this, he's letting out his emotions in this love song.
And I suppose you're right about what you know. And if they're from California, surfing, I can't imagine the Beatles wanting to write a song about surfing on the Liverpool docks. I don't think that would have been.
No. The other thing, of course, is that Dennis Wilson, the drummer, is the only one who was really into surfing. The others weren't really into doing it. They just wrote songs about it. So they were teen genre songs. But then you listen to a song like "Don't Worry, Baby," which on the face of it is about a drag race. It's really about a lot more than that on an emotional level. So, don't necessarily be fooled by the cars and surfing.
I've just looked up and down about 4 times. "Don't Worry, Baby" is on this album.
But there are people who like the Pet Sounds stuff, the later creative stuff, the mid-60s creative stuff, who sort of turn their nose up a bit at the surf stuff. But I think to really get Brian Wilson and the band, you have to be open to the surf era as well, because there is great music in there too. I mean, some of it's just fun, some of it's just cheesy fun, but that's fine for me. I don't mind a bit of cheesy fun as well. But
is this your attempt at getting me into the Beach Boys?
Well, I don't know how to get you into the Beach Boys. I don't know whether, You've
I will
listened to.
listen. I will. I may even go out and spend some of my own pounds, my own money times, and buy the Pet Sounds.
Yeah, have you not got it already?
Let me check. I could have it.
You sure you haven't got it? You've got a lot of these albums you've never listened to.
Let's
But
have a look. Let's have a
But
look.
that box set is the thing that really got me into the Beach Boys. So that was my way in, was the Good Vibrations box set. It's since been enhanced because there's a box set called Made in California, which is basically the same material, but it's fleshed out a bit. I think there's more discs.
Yeah.
And I think it's about 8 hours long rather than 6. So you get even more bang for your buck.
Here we go. Are you ready?
Yeah.
My Beach Boys collection, with that Brian Wilson album aside, is the Best of the Beach Boys, the 1966 compilation, the Beach Boys Live in London from 1977, the Very Best of the Beach Boys Volume 2 from 1983, and
Okay.
20 Golden Greats, the Beach Boys from 1976. And I also have South Island Sea Island Magic, the Waikiki Beach Boys, which is obviously nothing to do with the Beach Boys. It's out there.
Groovy.
So, and not a single Beach Boys song in there, I don't think. Blue
Maybe you
Hawaii?
Maybe you should. Maybe you should just dive in with Pet Sounds.
Pet Sounds. So we see how much Pet Sounds is going for.
The other alternative is that we make you a playlist and say these are some highlights from through the thing, and see if we can get you into it that way.
Get me into it from that way. Right, let's have a look. Country, United Kingdom. Let's have a look. Oh, there's loads of different copies of it. I wonder how much it sort of goes for. From £8 to 63, one pressing. The 83 pressing from £5 to £26. I'll give it a listen. And I think it's one of those albums, as a vinyl collector, that you should have in your collection. Just for the simple fact that you can say, I've got it in my collection.
I know there's a modern pressing of it that's supposed to sound amazing because it's half speed mastered or something like that. You can get a vinyl that's supposed to be the best version ever.
There is on a world famous shopping site.
There's also a mono versus stereo debate as well.
There we go, $26.99. So I presume that's a moderner pressing.
Yeah,
but I've just seen this album as well. Various artists, and it's called A Tribute to Pet Sounds.
Yeah.
That's £23.69. There's only one left in stock. Do you want to know some of the artists that are on there?
That are paying tribute to Pet Sounds?
Yeah,
oh, yeah. It could be anybody. Who's on there?
No one I've ever heard of. Good Vibrations by the Black Angels. Wouldn't It Be Nice by Indian Jewelry. You Still Believe in Me by The Shees. That's Not Me, Holy Wave. Don't Talk by Morgan Delt. I'm Waiting for the Day, The Shivers. Let's Go Away for a While, The Boogans.
Are these all alternative rock type people?
I don't know. I may have to. God Only Knows by Chris Catalina. I Know There's an Answer by Christian Bland and the Revelators. So a lot of people that both of us can quite easily say. Who? Yeah. 2016 that was released. So I will put Pet Sounds on. I will make that promise. I know we're doing the greatest album, our favourite album of the 1990s, but I may be able to interject for a little bit of Pet Sounds.
You have to decide whether you want it in mono or stereo, which is an interesting debate because, of course, it was made as mono. It was never stereo in the 60s. So but the stereo mix that they made in the 90s was approved by Brian. He did approve it, but of course it was made in the era when Brian was trying to emulate Phil Spector. So mono was a deliberate thing. He deliberately wanted it. Didn't want it in stereo at the time.
on the Fire of the Spot. Oh, I've seen it at 50. It's got the original mono and stereo version.
Yeah.
And it's got the 50th anniversary as well, mono.
It maybe doesn't make a huge difference. If you listen to it on headphones, you might prefer it in mono and stereo on headphones.
Yeah.
But I mean, the album, it doesn't necessarily radically alter the songs. It's more of a bit of a, it depends which flavour you prefer, but you're still getting the same meal. You're just getting, just depends whether you want to put a little bit more pepper or a bit more salt on it, but it's more or less the same thing, I guess.
Yeah. That is on my list of things to listen to, as well as everything else I've got next to me, which I still need to listen to. So
there you go. That's the Beach Boys, folks. What's your Beach Boys opinion? Are you a Wilson disciple? Are you one of these people who is yet to be converted? Do you like the surf stuff? Do you like Pet Sounds era? Are you a Smile fanatic? Do you prefer them in the 70s? As some people are trying to say now that they like the late 60s stuff even more than Pet Sounds. I'm not sure if that's
when did
that's
Pet
quite
Sounds?
right.
66 Pet Sounds.
66, yeah. I think in many ways that is his crowning glory, but that's not to say that the band didn't do a lot of great stuff in the late 60s, because they did do a lot of great stuff in the late 60s. Friends and 2020 and some of that is great stuff on there as well. So there we go. Beach Boys are done for now, but we'll come back to them again soon. Don't worry.